Yo and hello everybody, Mike here. Welcome to Bench Clear Media and a new show that we're launching called Hobby Think Tank. I love that intro because I know for you guys, for me, it brings me back to when I was 12 years old. Like every time I hear it, and I'm ready to hear Mal Allen tell us about this week in baseball and what's happening and all this stuff. And what a great intro. Really quick, guys, this is going to be a show that's done every week. And you're going to see usually two of us, but we brought the whole crew together, the whole hobby think tank together for this introductory episode so that we can show you who all you're going to get used to seeing every week. This will be typically a Thursday evening release for you guys. And we just want to cover relevant hobby topics and talk about it from a bunch of different angles, because the reason us four are on this screen is because we all don't agree on everything, and that's okay. And we want to have a place where we can discuss things relevant to the hobby and look at it from different perspectives, different places, and, have a good discussion about it without yelling at each other. Although that might happen from occasion from time to time. Right above me is Mike, who is Junk Wax Hero on YouTube. He does a great job on his channel. Danny Black, of course, from Sports Vault Radio. And what's your name again over there?
He doesn't do a name on this show, evidently.
I don't know. John Keating is my name. That's the name they gave me.
That 70s sports card show.
That's wrong, but thanks for trying.
That 70s card show, that too. See, we're already disagreeing. That's going to be a good banter for the show.
You got it wrong, but that would still be a PSA 10.
And to clarify for everybody, we're not going to let Mike Moynihan talk usually this much. This is just an introduction, so that's why he's going to be the lesser Mike.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear this Mike talk more than I have to. So what are we doing today, Danny?
Well, we have all of us together, and typically it'll probably only be two or three of us, but while we have all of us together, I think we started talking about some of the pros and cons and the grading and who's attached to who and why are they attached. And I think we all feel very differently on this. So as somebody who works with clients and as a private broker and a personal collector, I have my feelings, which change depending on the situation. And Mike, Junk Wax Hero, has some grading, John Keating some, and lesser Mike a lot. So I want to get everybody's perspectives on why and when and how they look at grading. And since Mike up top and I were talking earlier, I loved what you were talking about, Mike. So why don't you want to follow up on that?
Refresh my memory. What was that about?
You were solving the world's problems, talking about looking for stuff, whether or not it was graded, low grade, taking it, raw if you were looking for a set.
Yeah. So for my personal collection, I'm looking for, I'm not a big spender, so I'm looking for low grade, well-centered, presents well. So if I'm perfectly happy with a 2, if it looks good. I'd rather spend $150 for a 2 than $10,000 for an 8 or a 10.
Amen.
Does the number matter to you at all, or which company?
I'm an SGC PSA guy.
Why?
SGC for vintage, the slabs look awesome with vintage cards. It's amazing. Plus, I think that they're more accurate. More consistent with their grades, and they are faster to return cards, and their customer service is far superior to PSAs.
Have you used them more in the last year than before that?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's one of the interesting things, how much they've grown, but they've been around as long as, Beckett or PSA or longer, if you guys can correct me, but they've always owned pre-war and the vintage. They've much more held their own compared to modern. So John Keating.
Yes.
Explain to me your theory on grading, because I am thoroughly confused.
Here's I have graded cards, but I'm a lot like Mike. I don't shoot for the stars. I want a good card. What's important to me these days is the authenticity of a card, foremost. That doesn't mean I have any cards or any slabs with A's on them. I think I've avoided that thus far. But I want to make sure. I grew up in an era where they were printing cards left and right. Great example is somebody on Facebook, one of the Facebook groups I belong to, wants to buy a raw Pete Rose rookie card. And for people like myself who grew up in a certain age, that was our introduction to fake counterfeit cards, the 63 Rose rookie. So that's always in the front of my mind. If I am going to buy a nice card or an older card, I want to make sure A, it's not trimmed, and B, it's authenticated, or an authentic card. I guess it would be the other way around. It needs to be authentic first and then not trimmed. I have a little bit of a dilemma because I have a bunch of Michael Jordan cards that I don't know whether they'd look good in SGC slabs. So I've opened my mind to the possibility of CSG because they have the best looking slabs, and they finally came around with their flip. Their flip looks much better than it did a year ago. I have about, I don't know, 50 or 60 PSA cards, but those are strict purchases. They're not subbed. So I won't sub with PSA. I don't want to be caught in that meat grinder. And I have no urge to send my stuff away to camp for 18 months. They're my cards. They're not theirs. So.
Well, speaking of PSA, one of the things we hope to do with the show is to get, I think, viewer comments and stuff for us to talk about. And this kind of kicked off from a comment. Mike, the lesser Mike, can you bring us up to date kind of on what you got and your thoughts?
Yeah, so I just got back a PSA reveal from, or PSA order back, and I did a video revealing the grades that I got. And I wasn't thrilled. I would call myself mildly disappointed in the grades I got, but I wasn't shocked by it. But I got a comment, and this is what we want from you guys, is to give us comments on what you're hearing or what you're seeing and what you're thinking about the topics that we discuss. It's continually amazing to me, he says, how many collectors have legit issues with PSA over and over again, and to a lesser extent, the other third-party graders. Yet many, if not most, will saddle up to continue to submit anyway after disappointment, and the beast continues to be fed. And so my reaction to that was, I guess if we thought about a wish list, like let's create the perfect grading company, what would we all want? I think there are some things we would all want, and then there's some things that some people would care about and others wouldn't care about. Agree with that?
I think, yes, we all have different priorities. I mean,
right.
Keating's wrong on most of his, but I'm curious to hear about yours, Mike.
Well, mine are pretty simple. In fact, I laid it out in the comment to the guy. I want a grading company that gives fast and accurate grading, that's low cost, that has solid, nice looking slabs, a clean label, a set registry, which I put in all caps because that was important. And they all have to be with the same company because I want everything to look the same. I do not want a Frankenstein collection. And all the slabs have to fit in the beast because I've already built it. So that's all I need to have the perfect grading company. So
I'm trying to dehypnotize Mike because he's part of a.
Well, it's
I'm in the cult.
John, that sounds a lot like one of the companies that exist, doesn't it?
Yeah, SGC does that other than the set registry. SGC does all that, and they do it better than anybody. One of the things that drives me crazy about PSA is all the caveats you need to submit a card. You need to be part of their little Mouseketeer club. You need to, your value needs to be no greater than this number, an arbitrary number that they make up. They upcharge you. They put your cards, Mike, ahead of cards that you submitted 12 months ago. And I'm talking about Mike Moynihan. You've got cards that there's no sense, there's no rhyme or reason to the order that your cards get graded in, right? Admittedly so.
Insanely frustrating. Agreed.
Yeah. So why is that? What business in the world does that? If I order a mattress and it gets delivered to me in 2 weeks when somebody ordered the same mattress 8 months ago and they don't have it yet, how's that?
I was told by a PSA submitter today that if you send in a submission, the vintage cards or pre-war really are taking far longer on turnaround time than 70s and newer.
So, and what's with the there's been a lot of there was one big brush fire in the beginning of the year, right, where one of the group submitters went bankrupt, all that stuff. How does PSA not learn that lesson? Have they done anything to correct that glaring mistake? I know when I submit something to SGC, I pay before my cards go out the door.
I do not.
I don't know why they continued to do that. I mean, it feels like it's inviting more issues, more of the same problems, perhaps.
You know what's funny though, John, is I actually agree with you. And if I could start over right now, I would use SGC I would rebuild the beast to the right dimensions. I would submit every card. Unfortunately, I've been doing this for 15 years. And so I had, before SGC really
exactly, yeah,
who they
SGC wasn't who they were back then. Exactly.
Right. They weren't the same company. I hated the old flip. I hated the size of them. They didn't feel, SGC is way better today than they were when I started grading. So what does a guy like me, and especially with the registry, I mean, Mike, you admit that the set registry is a powerful thing, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not only that, it's that PSA authenticates in-person autographs, and SGC no longer does that. That's another big differentiator.
For sure.
So is it not just, we have something called brag tags, right? Where you put a tag on your backpack that says you're a gajillion mile flyer on whatever airline. Isn't that essentially what the PSA registry is? It's a brag tag.
First of all, we don't all do that. So
we don't all do what?
Have brag tags on our
I'm
luggage.
Just saying, yeah.
I mean, maybe in first class, but on Southwest, I don't see a lot of brag tags.
Right.
You can see a lot on Southwest right now.
Nobody's flying on Southwest.
Right. Yes, as we've all been grounded.
So is it not a bit of an ego trip? As somebody that I'm on the PSA set registry myself, but is it not a little bit of an ego trip?
Only, truth be told, like when I look at it's a great checklist first and foremost, which I know you can get checklists other places, but you can also create unique kind of sets on the set registry. It's both frustrating and awesome at the same time to have that, because they may pick a card for, let's say, a Hall of Fame rookie set. Well, you may like the Ripken Fleer more than the tops, or, just especially once you get into multiple companies, that 81 and beyond, which rookie card is chosen. Well, typically that's done in a groupthink stat. They send out an email. Hey, what card, when there's a new Hall of Famer that's coming, hey, which card do y'all want to use? Like for Albert Pujols, they have and Ichiro, they have the 2001 SP Authentic, which is a short print, super expensive rookie card. And you could have easily just picked their Topps rookie card and made this a lot simpler. Mm-hmm. My point is, I don't look at it, and I don't use the registry as a brag tag. I like seeing other sets that have, that guy's ahead of me. What does he have that I don't have? Or she, I guess. And, what do they have? And that'd be cool what if I could jump that person? How do I do that?
But isn't that just you bragging by jumping that person?
It is, because I don't even know who they are. That's but
you still want to beat them.
I think you're breaking a commandment there too.
Thou shalt not covet.
Yeah.
Well, I think
this whole hobby is false idols, coveting thy neighbor's cards, all that stuff. Thou shalt not steal. We do a lot of that. So I look at some more of the more obscure problems, like the whole I think it clouds the comp issues, because people look at the PSA and whatever aggregate they use to gather the numbers they have on there. That's not exactly clear either, or defined, or.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question. Everybody keeps saying they want accuracy in grading. Do we want accuracy or consistency?
Consistency, absolutely.
Well, what's the best catchphrase in the hobby? Buy the card, not the slab, or not the grade, whatever, right? I mean, that should be first and foremost. And Mike does that. Mike, the greater Mike does that. I'm not saying the lesser Mike doesn't do that, because the lesser Mike is very finicky about the cards he buys. But I mean, that's essentially, if you've got a card that you like the way it looks and it's a 2, so be it. You don't need to worry about somebody else's, jockeying for position with somebody else on that card.
Well, it also go ahead, Mike.
Sorry, Dan. I actually just did a video a week or so ago about how I'm going to grade fewer cards in 2023 because I like my cards raw. I'll grade the pre-war and really top-notch vintage cards, but I just feel like the money that I spend on grading takes away from buying more cards, which I prefer.
Right.
But isn't there a portion of grading that just lets you handle the cards more safely and actually see them more? I mean, I part of me actually enjoys having some of my cards slabbed just for that reason.
Yeah, and that's why I would grade the pre-war and like the Mickey Mantle vintage cards and Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, stuff like that.
Okay.
Mike Moynihan's got the best setup there is. I mean, it's all right there and all accessible. And it's like having a bunch of monster boxes and you could just pull them out and look at them. You can't do that necessarily in binders and stuff like that. He's got it all laid out nice, and he can handle them as much as he wants. But the little perfect fits or whatever they are on there, and he's good to go.
But not everybody can do that, right? Not everybody has that ability. But you can have things like behind you, Danny, a display. Graded card. Mike's got a display behind him. I mean, you do too, John. Over to your right is a display of cards, right?
Yeah, this is over there. The other guys are back there.
So, I mean, having graded cards, I think if you were to boil it down to, okay, I think everybody in the hobby can agree that, well, that's not true. I've heard people say, I can tell what an authentic card is. Yeah, I know, but isn't it good to have someone else tell you that it's also get another opinion besides just your own?
You're back to hubris. I mean, that's the brag tag. I mean, there are people who just think they do it better than the card companies.
Mike, let me ask you a question. You got some cards back that were deemed not gradable. Were they you just specifically asked for numbered grades, or were those they wouldn't slab them at all?
I asked for number grades.
So they're, in theory, they're authentic, obviously, but they're just not. They're either.
I have no question that they're authentic.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've been around cards long enough, there's telltale signs, and yet, 40 whatever years in the hobby, John, 40 years, I could still get duped. I'm not immune to someone pulling one over on me. And when I started buying, the reason I got into grading at all, I always thought it was so stupid. I'm like, this is so dumb. I felt like a lot of people out there feel. But the reality was I started buying higher end cards, and I said, I don't know that I trust myself as much as I'd like to think I do. Right. And if I'm going to buy a Babe Ruth or a Lou Gehrig or a whatever, I could learn, I could spend the time and have some expensive lessons, or I can trust a grading company to authenticate that card better than I can.
How many card companies will back up their authentication financially?
PSA does.
Is that something that we want in our perfect card company?
Sure.
Isn't that the whole point? I mean, if SGC, we just had this, Beckett just got sued for grading a card that was not authentic or was trimmed. Isn't that one of the things that we expect out of the companies, that if we get a grade back, that card is authentic?
Yeah, but good luck. I mean, we all know all the grading companies have graded unauthentic cards. They've graded unauthentic autographs. They've graded trimmed cards.
The first PSA card was a fraud.
Yes.
The first,
right.
But if
we're picking a perfect company, I want them to back it up financially.
Yeah, that Beckett card, that was the Steph Curry rookie, right? The gold refractor. Yeah. The thing with that is, and I don't think even PSA would cover that, because they Alt paid $168,000 for the card, and they believe it's worth $350,000 now, and they want Beckett to pay them the $350,000. And I don't think PSA would do that either, even with the guarantee.
Well, did anyone know if they cracked it or just crossed it over?
They cracked it at Alt headquarters, and took it to PSA.
Well, there's one. Do you guys believe in cracking just to get the slab you want, or to go for the grade? I don't like cracking.
Well, I mean, you're talking most cracks slabs, it seems these days, are to go from a 9 to try to get a 10, right? Which is to me, and I know there's thousands of dollars at stake, but the difference between a 9 and a 10 to subjective eyes, to me, it's more the gambling part that of the hobby that we've come to embrace somehow.
There's a channel out there that recently, I don't remember who it was, they cracked hundreds of PSA 9s and sent them back in, and 58% of them came back as 10s.
Right.
Well, that changes my plans for the evening.
So here, I have a solution for that, by the way, for all cracking and all that stuff. And people, I put this idea out there years ago, and I got absolutely lambasted for it. But most of those people probably don't watch my channel anymore, because they just left because they thought it was such a stupid idea. Do you know when you send a Mike? You may not know this. When you send in an autographed card, whether it's pack issue, if you send it to PSA DNA for authentication, did you know they put invisible ink on that card and mark it?
I did not know that.
They do that. If they did that to regular cards, by the way, nobody complains about that. People, it's in there fine. They disclose it. They're not hiding it. They tell you, hey, we mark every card with our patented invisible ink that shows that we did this. So if you crack it out, they can put it under a blue light or black light or whatever and tell you that. If you did that to regular cards, and everybody was going to say, don't you dare touch my card. We do it all the time with autographs, and nobody has a problem. If I had a 63 Topps Pete Rose, just to use the card John mentioned, that's signed by Pete Rose, and I send it into PSA DNA, they're marking that card with invisible ink. If we did that with regular cards and it got resubmitted to any of the companies, they would have to, God forbid, actually help it. Like, hey, no, sorry, man, this one's already been graded by BGS. It's a 9. We're not going to grade it.
There would have to be an agreement between the companies not to mark that as a marked card.
Well,
you won't see it. You can't.
You and I can't see it, but everybody, the technology,
but
the technology isn't proprietary. A black light is a black light.
No, collectors in PSA already bought the technology. They're going to start scanning like a fingerprint so they can get rid of this for the regular cards, because they don't want to end up having to do it to regular cards. So if they'll be able to get a fingerprint. So if we submit 10 identical cards, each one will have a slightly different scan. And if you resubmit it, they'll be able to match it up. That's what they say.
They have to fix that. If they could fix that, then the guy who sends in the hundreds of PSA 9s, they're going to either reslab them and use the same. Sorry, we graded this card, this exact card we graded however long ago. And the problem is, how do you do that without?
Why would you do that? You're cutting off your own revenue. PSA would cut off how many times the cards get reslabbed at PSA.
Well, but what if they charge you? What if they charge you and just give you the original grade if it hasn't gotten worse?
Yeah.
Well, they would do it because they lose credibility when videos like that come out.
I think they've lost credibility already, Mike. Truth be told.
Well,
but I get you.
How many of the companies have credibility?
None is your answer.
Well,
let me ask you about AI here. What are we doing about tag, right? I've said that I think the cows are already out of the barn. This would have been a great idea 30 years ago, 40 years ago, but we didn't have the technology. But we're so used to human grading right now. How is tag going to overcome that barrier?
Doesn't Arena also use AI? This is Derek Jeter. Great.
Are they 100%
Has anybody seen any Arena slabs in the wild? I have not. I'm not saying they're not out there, but I have not seen any in the wild.
Well, Tag's not doing pre-2000, I don't believe, which is interesting.
I think after talking to some people at Tag, their goal is to roll out over time to be able to grade earlier and earlier cards, eventually grading all of them. But John, I think you're right. I think you're onto something there. It's this, as much as we all complain and go, well, let's make this we'd love to take the human element out of it. We'd love to make it more consistent, like you guys said. Well, the way to make it consistent is to take the human, humans are not consistent. We're good at not being consistent. So if we could eliminate that, great idea. The problem is, how do you break? It's so hard to break into this pretty well established, mature market and make a name for yourself. I just think Tag's got they may have the greatest idea in the world. I just think it's
I got a question for you. Who do you think writes the code that these machines run off of? Humans, right?
Of course.
So you're not going to eliminate human error here at all, at any time. And to piggyback off of your point, SGC has been around a very long time, and they're finally maturing, right? They're finally at the age of maturity, which shows you how long it takes. And then there's others that, instead of ripening, are already falling off the vine, right? Like BGS. And CSG is an interesting one because, CSG is an interesting one because they've been around, not necessarily in the card game, but they've been around for a while. So,
they were huge on trading card games
and comic books, right?
Comic books,
coins. Yeah.
I have to defend Connor, my Pokemon Sun collector, who introduced me to them when they came over to sports cards.
Mike Moynihan, do you have any of your stuff CSG'd your comic books?
I do.
Yeah. So, I mean,
it's CGC on the comic book side.
Same company, though, right? Yeah.
Same company.
So, I mean, that's easier to break in, but as we know, SGC has put in a lot of sweat equity to get where they are right now.
Why doesn't SGC have a registry? Why do we think that is? And do we think they'll have one?
From people that I've talked to, like literally at the top, no names to be named, but who's at the top of SGC. They're planning on doing it. It's a monumental effort to launch something like that, and they, quite frankly, have bigger fish to fry. They're trying to become the best grading company, and they don't want to be the best database company. And so, Danny and I have talked, I think all of us have talked at one point, the universal set. If somebody could create a universal set registry where it didn't matter what slab you had, didn't matter, you could input your cards and could have it fit different sets and player runs and all kinds of different things that you would want to do, that would be a great solution. Unfortunately, the big gorilla PSA won't cooperate and share data, whereas the others would be willing to. They would have no reason not to embrace that idea. PSA,
because they're playing catch up. I mean,
right.
of course they want to. PSA has no incentive.
Right. And there will always be friction between, if you had a combined database, it wouldn't matter. People would still say, well, mine are all PSA or mine are all SGC or whatever. There would still be friction there, I think. And I have a 5-star collection because they're all this slab. And what about, how many different slabs are there for PSA at this point?
You mean over the years?
Just like 3 or 4 at least, right?
Oh, I mean,
slabs or labels?
Slabs. Well, I mean, I guess it's
the slab honestly hasn't changed a lot.
Has not changed.
No.
Except for,
I mean, they've gotten a little bit better tech. It's a little bit harder to crack, but it's,
Yeah, but there's always, I hear a lot about that. And with the collector grade and the investor grade and all that stuff, it's, I think Mike and I do it differently than most people. That's, we're just, I want my cards to be preserved. I submitted last year to SGC because I had cards that I had possession of them for 40 years and they're 70-year-old cards. And I want to make sure that they remain that way.
Well, what's ironic, John, those cards are like, here's a 53 Bowman color Gil Hodges. It came back evidence of trimming is what PSA says.
You were on the hunt for that. I know at the National, right?
I was, but I bought it from a collection from Chasing Cardboard. Okay. Beautiful card. If I send this to SGC and it comes back with a grade on it, who was wrong?
Huh?
I don't know the
arbitrary,
well,
man.
That's consistency versus,
But
number.
he's right. Who's right? Who's wrong? We don't know. I mean,
It's also just an opinion, right? They believe there's evidence of trimming, but
Is that based on a standard size?
well,
it's
they
like
won't
looking at
say
a
it's trimmed, right, Mike? They'll say there's evidence of trimming because
right.
saying it's trimmed puts them
Yeah,
in.
it's like when they don't authenticate an autograph, they're not saying that it's an inauthentic autograph. They're saying that they're not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm going to submit this to SGC. It'll be my first ever SGC submission because I'm very curious. I'm willing to pay the money to explore this idea of evidence of trimming. What'll be very interesting is if it comes back and they say, sorry, evidence of trimming, or however they use, word wise, how do they describe that? That'd be the consistency that we want in the grading space. Hey, look, multiple companies looked at this card. Two of the most reputable. Reputation is tarnished, no doubt, John, but they both say, hey, this card doesn't look right. Something's wrong. Something's
What have you done to make do you have calipers, or do you what have you done to make sure that card measures up?
Literally nothing.
Okay.
Now, a card can still be remember, they have tolerances on the size of the card, plus or minus X, and I think that's all very hush hush on what they consider, because they don't want people to know, because if people knew, it'd be easier for the trimmers and the whatever. But I've done nothing other than pull this card literally from a giant collection in West Virginia. I bought it, and I submitted to PSA. They said no bueno. This card was probably bought in the early 1980s by the person who owned it. It was sitting in a box since then until I bought it in October. And so,
unfortunately, the 80s were trimming central.
I have no doubt this has been going on. People think it's new. It's not.
Well, even 80s cards were different sizes, were they not? The vending and the regular cards were different sizes. Vending boxes.
I have this beautiful high number Jim Bunning, 67 tops. Pretty different Phillies. There's your Phillies, John. It came back min size required, which at least SGC will tell you what the problem, like on the, if you get it where it's altered or whatever, it'll say whatever description of what's wrong with it. I'm going to experiment with these few cards, and because I don't dislike SGC. People think you have to love one and hate the other. I think all of us would agree. Every company I love HGA's flips. I love the multicolor. I love the color match. I love the sideways flip where your Carl Yastrzemski rookie Mike right above your head would be in a sideways label that has the flip on the top of it. Brilliant idea. If we could just somehow combine all the good things we like about different companies, eliminate all the bad stuff, we could make this perfect company. The problem is each one of us would have different ideas of what makes that perfect company.
Brilliant idea, executed poorly, I think, by HGA. I don't like the look of it. When I first heard about it, I thought this is a great idea, and then when I saw it, I was like, that doesn't look good.
As much as we talk about everything, I was going to say there's no secondary market. I think as much as we talk about everything else, secondary market, unfortunately, is still going to be the number one driver.
Because money always wins.
Sadly.
I think we can all agree that that's the worst truth, because it's absolutely true.
Right.
Sure, but trying to bleed every last cent out of something, you know what you're getting with SGC. This is what your card costs to grade. Send it back to me, instead of giving me an arbitrary upcharge because we think it's worth this much. I don't know, man. Come on. It didn't cost you any more to grade that card.
I agree. That's silly.
Yes.
We all agree that's silly.
And then CSG having a problem fitting cards that are bigger than 2.5 by 3.5 in their slabs, i.e., pre-57 vintage cards. Like, why would you even? Some cards fit in there, some cards don't. Why would you even attempt to put a pre-57 card in one of your slabs?
Has anybody submitted with them?
Yeah, I my LCS does. I don't, but my LCS does, and he had some sent back, some Clemente rookies sent back because they didn't fit in the slab. Yet he has the 56 and 55 Willie Mays fit in the slab. It didn't make any sense to me how you can do that. If I'm going to submit this CSG, I'm going to submit my Jordan Finest or my Jordan stickers. I'll throw those in there. But I have a couple. I have a 63 Fleer Clemente. I have a 68 Killebrew Mantle Maze CSG. But that's about it. I bought them. I didn't submit them. So
I did not know that they could not fit all the sizes.
they can't even fit the same
horrible.
sizes. It's
That's
interesting
horrible.
that they couldn't even fit the same size card. It just happened to be the Clemente rookie was a 55 and the Maze was a 56. And I have a 54 Jackie Robinson. I'm certainly not sending it in there.
And who's doing all the handling of the card when they try to fit it in the case? How do they know?
Don't know.
Well, PSA has started. You'll see a lot of returns, people getting cards back where a traditional size card is put in the interior part is fit for a 56 tops, pre-57, and the newer card, the standard size card, will float around in there, and you're like, dude, what idiot was falling asleep when this was done? I mean, we can complain all day. We all have complaints. You can probably find a litany of them for every grading company. And where I see the biggest issue, and Mike, maybe you can speak to this. What's their incentive? Like, it seems like none of them are really willing to fix the problems. It feels like they're just like, nope, we're good. Especially PSA, they are the worst at it, right? At having any sense of, a suggestion box. Like, their suggestion box will be stuffed, right? Why don't they change? Why aren't they willing to listen to us?
I don't know that they're unwilling to so much as they don't need to, right? Their revenue is going to be the same whether they listen to us or not. They're still going to rake in the money. And until people stop submitting to them, they're just going to continue doing what they're doing because it's an investment for them to fix the problems that they have.
Right. It costs them money.
Yeah.
And so how do we, because you're so right, but for anything to change, we all have to stop. Well, guess what? Nobody's stopping. Like, that's I did a video about this. We have no one to blame but ourselves for where we are.
They're grading over 1 million cards a month.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not even close to stopping.
And new companies will come out and they'll say, we've fixed this problem that you hate about PSA or about SGC, but then they have their own problems too.
Right.
So there's never going to be that perfect company, and you just need to pick a company that whose faults you can accept.
PSA thinks they have one problem, and that's their backlog, right? Or their timely, the timely manner of getting cards. They think that's their only problem. And it's a great problem to have. That means you're having people continually throwing cards your way.
How about the companies that do the raw card authentication, pre-grade evaluation, whatever you want to call it? What do you guys think about that on raw cards?
So SGC was doing that at the National, and it seemed like it was they were just saying, hey, come and get a pre-grade from us, and then you can submit to PSA based on.
I think
it seemed
BGS
like very
does
bizarre.
It too.
Yeah. I don't know. It was weird.
But they guarantee that grade, though. Do they not guarantee that grade?
I don't think they do.
I thought BGS was doing something. Well, this is what we think it will be.
But there's DCI, there's Mike Baker,
Well, that's all. I'm not saying they're not extremely talented at what they do, but it can't be backed up, right?
Well, that's I'm not particularly a fan of that process. I think that's a money grab.
And then the little sticker, right? The little sticker on there that says, the only sticker that should be on anywhere near a card is the Nolan Ryan Foundation sticker.
Amen to that. And yet at the end of the day, there's still going to be a huge part of the hobby that says F grading completely. I just want my cards, like they came into this world, nothing on them. I want them nude. I want them raw. And
Yeah.
that, people think I only do grade. John's been here. I promise. I have an entire closet of ungraded cards.
Mm-hmm.
People only see this, but they don't see this, right, John?
Yeah, it's massive. Yeah.
I have a ton of them. I love them. So I'm not a slave to grading. I enjoy grading. I think it adds a lot to the hobby. I think we can all, well, maybe we can't all agree. We certainly won't all agree. I like what slabbing offers to the hobby. I like that there are multiple companies. I like competition. I like creativity. I like ingenuity within the space. I like that there are new companies trying different things. I hope they all do really well. And yet, probably still going to be a PSA guy just because I have 4,000 PSA slabs, and I'm kind of I already made my bed with them. Problems or not, and I don't make excuses for it. I admit they have major issues that I don't like, and again, I don't have another choice.
You sound like my wife, dude. That's exactly what my wife says. She's
Shit.
too far. She's too far into to correct course.
Well, let me ask you guys: a year from now, who are the top 3 companies in what order? Any change?
What do you? Well, that's a little.
Well, that's
question.
well.
What do you think they are? What do you think they should be?
What do I think they're gonna be? What do you think they're gonna be at the end in a year from now?
PSA, SGC, CSG.
And Beckett's off the map. I agree.
My preference is SGC, CSG, and PSA, but I'm living in a fantasy land.
Was that the exact opposite?
No, I'm saying Mike is right, but I'm saying if I had my druthers, it would be what I said, SGC, then CSG, then PSA. That's my preference in order of cards that I would collect, but that's not what the market will be. The market will be what Mike says it is.
Mike, lesser Mike, what would you want it to be, and what would you think it is in a year?
I'd want it to be SGC, CSG, PSA. It will not be.
That would force PSA to change.
Right.
And can CSG take SGC? No. So a year from now, we're already saying we know the answer. Is that where we are?
Look, SGC's doing all the right stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question they are running a great ship over there. I think they can. Well, I know they can handle more cards than they're getting. It's sadly the almighty dollar, the secondary market, is driving people to use PSA more than the reasons I use PSA is not dollar driven. It is personal preference on a whole lot of different levels.
And you're a vintage collector. The advantage PSA has is they also have the modern market. So
right, they win on both sides.
Yeah.
Although SGC's cutting into that, right?
Well, they did the Topps Chrome deal, I think, because they wanted to try to push the modern.
Right.
But
so,
all right. Well,
look, we're not going to solve all the problems. This show is not meant to solve problems. It's to hopefully create conversations. It's hopefully to get you guys thinking out there, to have us provide different perspectives. None of us are saying we're right about any of this stuff. We have an opinion just like you do. All 4 of us have opinions that will vary over time with each other as you watch this show and different topics that we're going to talk about. Love to hear your comments down below about what you'd love us to discuss on a weekly basis. We'll kind of start hoarding all of those different topics because we want stuff that you guys care about. We want to talk about things that you're concerned about, that you'd like to hear our opinions on, and we'll kind of go from there. Danny, anything else?
No, I think, normally we won't get the pleasure of having everybody. So I'm glad we all got to be here tonight. And, the hobby is never ending in stories. It does not lack for drama or conversation. So I'm looking forward to you guys and a good venture forward.
Should be fun. I love you, John.
John, any parting thoughts?
Thanks for having me, you three. I appreciate it. I know I'm I know I'm never anybody's plus one, but I really appreciate it.
Mike,
Yeah.
Glad to have you.
Me too. I look at you three experts, and I have imposter syndrome for sure.
nah, you can buy the T-shirt online. Don't worry.
I keep waiting for the hobby SWAT team to bust down my basement door and take me away, Mike. I'm the biggest fraud there is. So.
I think it would be like Reno 911.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's the hobby police. All right. Well, on that note, I think we're going to head out of episode 1. We don't have an outro, so this is it. See you guys next time, and make sure you tune in on Bench Clear Media. And I think we're going to be going. I think Mike said every Thursday night. Is that what we're going for?
Yes, sir.
Like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.